Welcome to Wheatland, the country residence of James Buchanan. Uncle James was the 15th President of the United States. My name is Harriet Lane Johnston. I am James Buchanan's niece and was First Lady during his presidency. I would like to share some special memories of James Buchanan and our life at Wheatland. After serving as Secretary of State in Mr. Polk's cabinet, Uncle James decided to retire from the hectic pace of political life in Washington. He sought a home in his native state of Pennsylvania. In 1848, he acquired Wheatland, a 22-acre farm which raised oats, fruits, and vegetables. In time, there were 2 fine horses for our carriage, a family cow, some pet dogs, and a canary. Wheatland provided all that Uncle wanted: privacy, quiet, and peacefulness. A circular carriageway led to the front of the house, which was surrounded by a grove of oaks, elms, and evergreens. The house was built 20 years before Uncle purchased it, and its architecture reminded him of the republican virtues of ancient Greece and Rome. The front and back featured porticos with sturdy columns. Windows and doors were arranged in a symmetrical manner. The arched windows, or lunettes, above the doors, and the circles above the windows added grace to the formal exterior. When my cousin James Henry and I were orphaned, Uncle took us under his care. My cousin once said, "No father could have bestowed a more faithful and judicious care upon his own children than this somewhat stern but devoted bachelor uncle," and I agree. My days at Wheatland were spent penning letters, doing needlepoint, and enjoying visits with friends. Many visitors stayed all day. We gathered around the center table in the parlor for conversation, or enjoyed the warmth of the Franklin stove in the winter. Dining at Wheatland was an important ritual. When we had guests, dinner consisted of at least 5 courses, which were overseen by our faithful housekeeper, Miss Hetty. Dinner was announced by a gentle knock on the door by one of the servants. Then we proceeded to the dining room, which glittered with candles, crystal, monogrammed silver, and French china. We used these tumblers with the wheat motif for water. Uncle's wine cellar was well stocked, especially with his favorite, old green seal Madeira. At the end of the dining room, a massive mahogany sideboard was covered with extra fruits, wines, and glasses. The meal was long and leisurely, and Uncle James was always the life and soul of the dinner. After a splendid meal, Uncle told stories, or I played the piano. Evenings usually ended at 10, with Uncle saying, "It's time for all good Christians to be in bed." Bidding good night, he left us to stay up as long as we saw fit. The servants always put candles in the hall niche. As each of us was ready to go to bed, he took a candle from the niche to light the way upstairs. Uncle's bedroom was comfortable. He often spent quiet hours here reading or in contemplation. My room was a pleasant place for correspondence and needlework. Uncle James hoped to be elected president in 1852. Instead, that honor went to Franklin Pierce. Afterward, Uncle sailed to England to become minister to the court of St. James. Later, I joined him in England. For me, it was the realization of a beautiful dream. Why, we even dined at Buckingham Palace with Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. Uncle succeeded in establishing closer diplomatic relations between Great Britain and the United States. When we returned to America, James Buchanan was extremely popular. He was now considered an elder statesman because of his lifetime of political experience. The nation, on the other hand, was being torn apart by the issue of slavery. It needed an experienced and dependable president. In 1856, the Democratic Party nominated James Buchanan and John C. Breckinridge for president and vice president. After the election in 1852, Uncle lost interest in attaining the presidency. When nominated, however, he accepted it as a duty and responsibility. For me, the upcoming election was exciting. Home became a bustle of political activity, for the nation came to Wheatland. I purchased a fine oak desk, a sofa and side chairs with horsehair seats for the library. This room soon became the center of Uncle's correspondence. Here, and in the sitting room, Uncle met with political callers. In November of 1856, James Buchanan was elected President of the United States. From November until the inauguration in March, it was reported that over 400 people came to Wheatland daily. Cousin James Henry was appointed private secretary to handle mail and briefings and to assist in preparing the inaugural address. In March, we moved to Washington. White House life was lively and social, but Uncle's presidency was marred by the issues of slavery and difficulties with Congress. Uncle worked desperately toward reconciliation and compromise. Despite these efforts, shortly after his administration ended, the Civil War broke out. He returned to Wheatland fatigued and burdened by the nation's problems. In response to accusations made against his office, Uncle published his only book, Mr. Buchanan's Administration on the Eve of the Rebellion. During his final retirement, life went on comfortably at Wheatland. On January 11th, 1866, I was married to Henry Elliott Johnston in the parlor at Wheatland. Though Uncle was sad to see me leave, he was also pleased, for he had a strong desire to see me settled before his death. On June 1st, 1868, James Buchanan passed away quietly at Wheatland. All of us were at his side. Despite his request to be buried without pomp or parade, thousands crowded the streets from Wheatland to Woodward Hill Cemetery, where my dear uncle is buried.
The James Buchanan Foundation was established in 1936 to preserve Wheatland and the memory of James Buchanan and his family. Wheatland is a non-profit corporation which receives no government aid and is supported solely by admissions, shop sales, memberships, fundraising events, and contributions.